All right. I'm here with John DeWitt, who is the managing director and the founder of the Small Enterprise Foundation in Tzaneen, South Africa, and also with Colin Rice, who is the director of social performance monitoring for the Small Enterprise Foundation. So great to be with both of you through Zoom, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about how you're responding to the COVID crisis. John, why don't I start with you? And how has the South African government responded to the crisis? What are the steps that they've implemented to try and reduce the transmission of the disease?
I have to say that we are all like, I think, humbled and so thankful for the strength of our government, the leadership, the very clear-headed, very, very sensible leadership that they had. So right now we are on 2,605 cases.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in South Africa, you can literally ask anybody in the street, how many cases have we got as of early this morning, and they'll tell you.
Yeah.
Right out to the nearest.
We know state by state, but probably the national not as well.
So they implemented a lockdown on the 26th of March, which was quite early. I think at that stage, I know the previous Sunday we'd had 84 cases, so I would guess it had got up to about 200 or 250 or something. So it felt early, and it's quite a strong lockdown because in our case, unlike in the US, you can't go for a run, you can't walk your dog.
Oh, really? Well, what are you and your wife doing?
Well, my wife is really into her sport.
Right, she's a biker.
Yeah, that's right. So it's tough for her. It's tough. So she's having to do exercise just inside the house.
Wow.
And she's doing that, But she certainly was wishing that she could do normal exercise.
Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. So anyway, so they and the numbers, I mean, very, very soon after the implementation of the lockdown, the numbers would only increase by relatively low figures of 9%, 8% a day. They're now down to more like the sort of 4%, 5% level.
That's good.
Increase.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, last night was kind of a historic moment because they did the first very, very, very cautious opening up. So they are now allowing, which they weren't allowing this before, they're now allowing automotive repair, which is in some way related to essential services. Mm-hmm. They're now allowing that, and they're allowing hardware and construction industry, again, related to essential services. They've also had to open up and allow mining back again. Because it's an interesting thing, which in mines, these very deep mines,
right?
In very, very deep mines, if they don't continuously work them, dangerous gases build up in the mines. And then it would take huge amounts of money before they could go back down again. So I think they're opening up with like 50% capacity.
But in those mines, you have the miners crowded together in elevators going down.
I think that that's part of the thing about 50% capacity. And I mean, I don't know if they could literally, have the cages people go down in are big, really big. Okay. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're a good 12, 15 feet wide, probably even wider. But whether they could afford to only put 3 or 4 people in a cage, that's another story.
Right. So if you're under a lockdown, that means no groups can get together, and your program is 95% group lending. So how has it affected your ability to do your operations?
Yeah. So firstly, from our staff's point of view, we took the decision that all staff would be in lockdown.
Right.
Financial services is regarded as an essential service in South Africa. But there's a bit, it's not really clear as to whether that includes microfinance as well. It's not crystal clear. So we could claim that. We could take a chance and claim that. But anyway, all of our staff are in lockdown. So as I say, lockdown started 26th of March. And in the first 2 weeks of April, 80% of clients repaid on time.
Wow.
And they didn't meet incentives. I don't think they met, of course, we don't really know because we're not there. We're not,
Right.
I mean, our staff live in the same villages as them, but they're not wandering around the villages to see what clients do. So I think that maybe groups just got together informally, or maybe just, individuals and groups collected their money together and then went to deposit it into our account. We do expect to receive the remainder of that money over the rest of April. So we think we'll finish April with hardly any arrears at all.
Wow.
So that's the one step. Now, what we've started doing now, and literally it was this week, so the whole new era for us, where we're now phoning every client and then giving them an option that if they want to postpone their May payment, they can do that. But if they want to apply for a loan, if they're a repeat client, then they can actually apply for the loan. This will be over the phone. So then the field worker will speak to each client individually. And then make sure every client is happy with every other client's loans. There's a bit of a procedure to make sure.
Right. Yeah, because the group has to vote on the loans, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's actually the field worker first calls the group leader, tells them, look, if you guys want a loan, discuss it, then I'll call you. Or actually call me back. Then when the group leader calls, the field worker will ask, okay, what size loan do you want? And what size does everybody want? Get that from the group leader and then call all the other members to make sure they're all on the same page.
Wow.
So that's actually happening right now. And I must say, I'm blown away with this idea that we are calling 200,000 people over the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
It's kind of like, I wonder if anybody in South Africa has ever called 200,000 people.
Right.
So that's how it's happening right now. That's
great. But I imagine, I've met some of your clients and a lot of them are doing little cornerstone stores, spaza shops, or their informal trading that they do. So how has the lockdown affected their businesses?
So actually, this is a good point for me to hand over to Colin. So Colin, why don't you just give a little bit of background for the research that you're doing?
Yeah. So we started, kind of just, I think about a week or, 3 or 4 days before the lockdown was implemented. But when it was clear that there were restrictions that were going to be put into place, we started doing kind of an impromptu survey, trying to understand what the impact is and also kind of what the expectations of impact is going to be. And so basically every 3 or 4 days, I think that's kind of ongoing now. So every 3 or 4 days, we're meeting to look over what's been collected. And, there's a few things we've been tracking over the whole course of it. And there's other questions we've kind of been adding as we go along, trying to understand, as questions come up or as we're trying to respond to things. But there's definitely, at this point, we're seeing about, I think, just like 75% or so of our clients have stopped operating.
So they're just not earning income at all.
Yeah, that the business has completely shut down. Again, that's only of clients who had businesses at the beginning of all this.
Right.
And it's definitely depending on the type of business, people doing anything with events, with like hair salons, some of those businesses have been particularly hard hit. Spaza shops, kind of some of the tailors and sewing businesses. Some of them are still, it's kind of split there. They're still operating, but there are, even ones who are able to keep operating or may be allowed or considered an essential business. Now getting stock is becoming a huge issue. Right. Whether it's just being able to travel somewhere to get the stock or whether it's, the suppliers themselves being shut down. So it's definitely been a very, and even the ones who are still operating, a lot of them are definitely seeing, significantly less customers, or, they're trying to doing some changes to their practices to try and adjust. But so it's been a pretty significant impact. And I think, we're also trying to get a sense of, if this keeps being extended, how long can people hold on? How long can they maintain? And so that's really something we're starting to look at now, is just kind of people's level of security, or how much longer they think they're going to be able to maintain at all. But it's been a little unsettling seeing some of the things coming in, but I think it's helping us as we're kind of getting the information on an ongoing basis. We're trying to respond to each thing as it comes in. So
right now, you say 75% have stopped, their businesses have stopped operating, of those that had businesses. And the others have been, businesses slower. And John, you said 80% of the payments came in. So how does that work? How do people who are no longer earning income able to make payments to you?
So essentially, I think what's a bit different with microfinance or with informal sector business in South Africa versus maybe other countries is, even in the informal sector, people sell on credit, because most of their clients earn salaries and get paid at the end of the month.
Okay.
So when people are paying us in April, a big chunk of that money was actually earned in March, but collected in the first days of April.
Okay.
After people were paid.
Okay.
And so people had just got their income from their businesses in those first 2 weeks of April. So in some ways, they're really actually paying the money they earned in March.
Right. Okay. So it's sort of like a lag, and May is when you'll really see the effect on payments.
Yes.
And you're offering. That's why you're offering to postpone that payment.
Yeah. And of course, what happens is those clients who are hoping for a loan disbursement in May. So the way it works in SEF is, when you pay your last installment, on the same day you can get the disbursement for your next loan. So you actually apply for the loan 2 weeks before you finish it.
Right.
Well, whatever. So people who want, their May disbursement, or people who want their June disbursement, well, they'll definitely make sure that they pay the May or June installment, so that they can get that disbursement. And it's kind of like obvious. It's like, you're going to pay 600 Rand, and then you're going to get a 4,000 Rand loan.
Right.
So cash flow wise, it totally makes sense.
Right.
Now, obviously it would have been very nice to not have to insist on repayments from those clients as well. But their repayments is what fuels disbursements.
Right. Yeah.
So no repayments, no more disbursements for anybody else.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have tons of cash flow to be able to just disperse loans for 3 months. And
And the government has not imposed any sort of loan moratorium there, like in other countries. No. I mean, they have a program themselves that they run, and in that program, they're giving a payment holiday, which includes no interest charges as well. So, no repayment and no interest charges. Our banks, in terms of small business loans, our banks don't do microfinance. They just do small enterprise finance. They don't do very much small enterprise finance. So with the small enterprise finance they're giving a payment holiday in terms of capital, but they still charge interest, and they still accrue interest over that time. Yeah. And Colin, are you seeing in the surveys, are people struggling to get food? Is that a problem?
Like as like I said, every 3 or 4 days we're doing another summary round, and kind of gradually, but there definitely has, we have some kind of, like, the last question is just open, comments or challenges our clients are facing, different from the business or the other questions. And I think there has been, especially in the past couple weeks, a noticeable increase, and at least people mentioning, you know, I'm starting to struggle to meet my household needs. I don't know how I'm going to get food for the house. So, I mean, it's still, you know, like I said, I mean, it's definitely been increasing in terms of how people are referencing it. I think, you know, most clients still feel that they're, you know, we also are asking, you know, if you were to stop earning any income today, how long would you be able to pay for essentials?
Right.
And kind of, you know, like most of our clients are within a month or less range in responding.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously a very loose estimate. But I do think that is something that's becoming more and more prevalent of an issue. You know, less focus on the, you know, not earning the income from the business, and now people are saying, I'm just worried about the household. So yeah, it's definitely been seen.
And as you read through the survey responses, are there any that really stick with you of challenges that clients face?
I mean, I think all the comments generally about like that level of concern for the household, if it's really, you know, if they're reporting to these people we have calling that, you know, I don't know where I'm going to get food for the next week. I think kind of anything like that is
Right.
is something that is not fun to see. So.
And is the government coming up with any sort of response for people who are at that level, who are running out of food and don't have any income coming in?
John might have to speak. I know there are some food parcel programs, but I think there are, you know, a lot of struggles with some of these. But John, maybe I'll let you speak to that, or if you have any other.
Yes. So, you know, when we started, I was saying how the government has just got the admiration of everybody in the country. But this is actually one place where they have stumbled. So they recognize that for those people who are the most vulnerable in society, they have to do something. You know, they have to provide, or have to do something. And an idea that was already floated a good 2 weeks ago or so was to give every recipient of a child grant. So you know about the child grant, you know about the old age grants, the child grants. So the old age pension, so everybody's receiving an old age pension, or everybody is receiving a child grant would get an additional 500 Rand grant for 3 months. And people think, look, that's a really minimum amount of money, but it definitely would help with food security. Definitely, I mean, it would just help people to scrape through. But you know, South Africa's finances are very, very tight at this stage. They're very tight before we started the COVID crisis. But as I say, the government has kind of stumbled because the idea came 2 or 3 weeks ago. It started picking up some good momentum at that time, and literally every time the cabinet meets and to discuss COVID, and that's like twice a week. We're all waiting for them to announce this. They're going to do this, and it just hasn't happened. So we were so expecting it to happen. I think it was on Wednesday, and it didn't. So now everybody's like, are they going to do it or not?
Yeah.
So there is concern.
And I don't know how widespread the coverage of the child grant is. I know in other countries they've seen a challenge is the government has people in the government social protection program on the welfare rolls. So they may be providing more funds to them during this time and doing something for employed workers who lose their jobs. But often the informal sector in between gets left out of the government programs, and the microfinance organizations have found they have a role to play in advocating for this group that may not be included in the government's plans. Are you seeing anything like that in South Africa?
Yes, they are talking about that studies have been done. So in the South African case, I think it's because of the child grant in particular that's very effective at reaching, you know, the poorest households. But they are saying that they'll be able to reach 85% of who they want to reach, but they will miss 15%, which I'm guessing in South Africa there must be like a million people,
right?
And so they're very concerned about that. And a lot of the people who are advising the presidency and so on, very concerned about that. We can play a role in helping them to identify those households. I mean, from amongst our clients, we can do that. But we sort of like playing with the idea a little bit is, could we actually even use the resource of our clients,
Right.
200,000 people, to
Right.
help them identify others.
Right.
But we just don't have the resources to carry forward ideas like that, in a firm kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And going forward, in other countries, they've talked about a challenge for some businesses going forward if they're still concerned about the coronavirus, even if the lockdowns get lifted. People who are hairdressers or in close contact with other people, they might find their business drastically reduced in the future. Do you see something like that happening, and how do you think you will help your clients move out of this downturn?
So yes, I think that the communities will be very aware that going to a hairdresser, that's a tricky thing. So I think that right now, as I said, the number of people infected in South Africa is tiny.
Mm.
2,600 people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's increasing at a very low rate, this 4 or 5% rate. And it's been on this 4 or 5% for close to 20 days now.
Yeah.
So it's not just a blip.
Yeah, compared to the US, which is more like 20% right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So if you have those rates, I think people will be less fearful.
Right.
To go to a hairdresser. But I think it's also quite possible that, the rates increase or people are just more fearful. Even if the numbers are low, that people are more fearful of going to a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. We don't have the ability to direct people towards other industries.
Right.
Not on scale. We could help, small, tiny number of people, sure, but not on scale. But I think that what happens is that, those hairdressers, the people we work with, they're entrepreneurs.
Right.
So if they see one line of business closing, they start another one.
Right.
And I think they will do that.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll be there, if they let's say they decide, okay, right, this hairdressing thing is not working out.
Right.
I'm going to start breeding chickens.
Yeah.
Something like that. And we'll be there to give them another loan so they can start that business.
Right. And that's what I see as part of the advantage of the groups is they talk about all these things and they see what each other's doing and what's making money and what's not. And it helps the flow of information within the community so people can take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And what do you see going forward? Colin, as you monitor social performance and effect on clients, how do you think this will affect the way CEF operates going forward?
I don't think that, in terms of whether we would have any lasting changes from this, or in terms of how we kind of, I do think that just through this process, in some ways, we're learning a lot about the clients and how they're reacting to shocks and how they're adapting to things that's, we might not have picked up otherwise. And also, we're doing a lot of drilling in, more than we had in the past in terms of, the primary source of income in these houses, what proportion is coming from the business. So I think in some ways there's, it's obviously not in the best context, but some of the information coming through, it is letting us know, in terms of just kind of strategies our clients are using and how, in the future we might be able to kind of, use some of these insights to look at new products or new ways of servicing them. But, I think in the short term, it is more, at this point we see if there is an end to this or a horizon coming soon, that I think there will be, things will slowly kind of work their way back. I think that there's a significant extension. We would see a lot more significant changes in the sort of businesses clients would be restarting and things. But, for the time being, I think it's up in the air. But yeah, go ahead, John.
What I wanted to say is it's interesting with the research. Initially we started it because we wanted to understand the livelihoods of clients.
Right.
What's the impact going to be on their incomes? And could we see any need for emergency loans? So this issue of people getting into a situation where they need money for food. That kind of thing. So that was the aim. But more recently, we start to see intersections between what's happening in the policy environment and the research we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So an example is, right now, food traders, even informal food traders, are allowed to operate.
Okay. So the spaza shops can keep going?
They can keep going. They can keep going. But what we were hearing from field staff was, yes, if let's say somebody's got a spaza shop, they can run that. But then when the stock runs out, now they have to go and get stock. And sometimes what was happening was people were heading off to buy stock. Then they meet the police who are enforcing the lockdown.
Right.
And the police say, well, where do you think you're going? And the person says, I'm going to go buy stock, And they say, no, you're not. And so the police don't recognize it as an essential business, and turn people back. Now, we would hear those stories from field staff. Then we would go to Colin's studies. And Colin has been looking at, I think the particular question there was so something like, what is preventing you from running your business? Or I think it was something like that. Yeah, yes, Colin?
Yeah, well, that we'd kind of ask, what is the impact you're seeing? And kind of one of the common options was trouble stocking, whether it's these transport or otherwise. But yeah, now we've asked some other drill down questions.
Yeah, so we see trouble stocking, but interestingly, what Colin was picking up from trouble stocking wasn't the issue of police stopping people, not immediately. I think he was seeing transport issues,
lack of taxis or suppliers being closed, or
But now it might be that the police thing is in there, but it's hidden. That people aren't saying it directly; they're just saying transport issues.
Right.
So now we go back, and now when we identify that, we have got the opportunity to then go back to the policymakers and say, this is what you're trying to achieve, and that's fine. You're allowing the spaza shops to operate, but they can't operate if the police don't allow them to restock.
Right.
So we need to address this thing.
Right.
And fortunately right now, because the wife of the former president is a founder of one of the microfinance organizations in our network, she absolutely has the ear of many cabinet ministers. And she knows which cabinet ministers to approach who are particularly sensitive about the informal sector. So if we find things like this, we can take it to her and try and influence policy. So it's actually quite a unique opportunity that what Colin's work is doing on the one side, we actually can take it across and hopefully get policy changed. And again, hats off to the South African government. Like every time that they do a move, it's literally, okay, we're going to open up, but what about the informal sector? They're asking that again and again and again.
That's great. Yeah. And having that information flow is so important at this time. And I think that's one key role that microfinance organizations can play, that you're in so many villages, you can report back, this is what's happening on the ground.
Yes, yeah. And let me give you another example. So one of the things that they declared was essential service is banking as an essential service. So obviously being able to save money and being able to withdraw money from your savings, but be able to get loans as well. That is, all of us would agree those are financial services. But in the rural areas, the bank which has got the greatest outreach by far is the post bank. I mean, in most cases, you'll find a post bank might be in a village or in the next door village, but there's no other commercial formal bank, for 20, 30, 50 kilometers. So they're the only ones. And then on the first Monday after the shutdown, clients would go to the post bank to go and draw their loans and find it closed. I mean, it was absolutely shocking. The president on the Thursday is saying that financial services are essential services, and within 2 working days, the post banks are closed. It is in direct, contravention of the policy. So obviously we could then highlight that. We could then rush back to the policy makers that what's going on.
Well, and that's where your payments get paid, right? So,
Yep, that gives us a motivation as well. Yeah, another motivation.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you see coming a month or two from now? Do you think you'll be back to regular operations, or do you think this will continue on?
You know, I get inspired when I hear the guys from BRAC talking.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you hear them and they'll say, look, we've been through a lot of cyclones in Bangladesh, which absolutely wiped out everything.
Right.
And we've been through Ebola, 7 months, everybody was locked down. And the resilience of people, they come back. Now in South Africa, we've had times where, I remember times where floods cut off certain villages. So people couldn't get in and out of the villages. It's only for a short time, but nevertheless, it happened. The other times when there's been community protests, and some of those protests actually went on for months. They wouldn't allow people in and out of the communities. But in all of that time, our work never faltered. So I somehow think that the clients are going to bounce back. The only way they wouldn't is if you really had a lockdown as severe as the current one, where 75% of people cannot operate their businesses, where the police are in the streets and shutting down businesses and not allowing people to travel and not allowing people to walk up and down to go to a business. Yes, in other words, under like martial law almost.
Right.
Yes, then I think it would be very tough.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen. That's going to be lifted, within 2 weeks, or they'll begin lifting it.
And so far, you see people are still primarily using cash and trading in cash, or have things moved digitally?
No, it's all cash. Yeah.
I think a number of our clients are reporting operating on credit a little more than they, the ones that are still operating, I think are being a little more lenient with their customers. And I think as a result of, that their customers are kind of demanding it. And also people are just struggling to get, cash, even if they do have it in the accounts.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense,
they're talking about Corona cash. So the idea that the cash carries the germs, and trying to push more towards digital, but that then leaves out, the bottom sector. Even if they have phones, it's they're feature phones, and they don't have the spots to transfer the money into cash, or the agents don't want to deal in cash. So that's having a real effect on people at the bottom end of the economy.
Yeah. So far, South Africa just doesn't have that network of agents at all.
Yeah.
So we don't have the average person. We don't have 10%. We don't have 1% of the average population doing mobile payments.
Mm-hmm.
I think people do buy. I think they do buy airtime, probably digitally.
Yeah.
And I think they maybe pay for
Training
electricity.
Yeah.
But it hasn't moved over to buying normal everyday goods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're able to keep operating there, and it's great to hear how you're using the information, how you're able to keep in touch with your clients during this time and use this information to guide government policy as well.
Yeah. No, thanks. And so tell me now, I always try and think of, okay, which countries have maybe been ahead of the curve? And in other words, they got Corona before we did. They got to the point of where the curve got flattened and maybe lockdowns started being released. Do you know of countries with microfinance, which we could then learn from? Do you know?
Yeah. So Vietnam seems to, similar to South Africa, has been able to keep the numbers very low, and they're opening up again. China is opening up, but it already had a big digital presence, so I think it's just accelerated the move to digital financing there. So I think those are, Pakistan is just beginning to open up now. And
okay.
They also have a big government put out a lot of money to people in poverty through their social protection program. They're sending out these monthly payments now to people in poverty.
Yeah. By the way, I was just quickly reading, scanning of an article that you did, and there was this quote that you mentioned from the guy who was
Fundación Paraguay, Martin.
Yeah.
Martin
Yeah.
Bird.
Yeah, that's right. And he, I mean, it really was quite inspiring what he was saying. So
yeah, and it was great. And his big line was, "We're going to leave some skin on the barbed wire, but we're going to make it through."
Yeah, I thought that was an amazing comment. That was an amazing comment. Yeah, I mean, literally,
probably
when
relate to that.
So when we have this issue about where we are not clearly defined as an essential service. So do we go to the field? Right now, we're not going to the field for the health of our staff, but the point might come where we do need to go to the field. And so I was thinking, well, now do we do it, even though the law is not clear? Then of course, if somebody's saying, look, you have to leave some skin on the barbed wire, then it's kind of like, okay, fine,
Right.
I'll take the chance.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
Well, keep up the good work, and hope you and your families and your staff all stay safe during this time. I had a great time with all of them a few weeks ago, so thinking of them.
Thanks, Larry. Same to you and your family as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Talk to you later.
Great. Do well.
Cheers, guys.
Yep.
Bye.